folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Today we're going to be talking about some tips I have for you for Chapter 2 of the Mines of Moria raid. The latest update got pushed out on Thursday, and my guild was lucky enough where we had started the raid on Wednesday, and we had about 17 hours of Chapter 2 raid time. So I did a little live stream, and we've got some tips for you today. Along with that update, though, came the fact that Arwen is farmable. She's on the hard node 5.5 of the Shadow campaign. If you haven't quite gotten there, the actual hard to beat one is actually 5.3 because they make you use their own iron hide instead of the one you have. So you need a fifth member in here to kind of get through that. And I think if you can get through 5.3, you can probably get through 5.5. And she's probably worth farming if you're going to start farming Elrond. Eladin is also no longer in the premium currency store. They didn't mean to do that, but he'll be coming to a node very soon in the future here, probably in the next update. So let's talk about the raid, Chapter 2 of the raid. It's a little bit harder than Chapter 1 of the raid, and actually let me demonstrate that by showing something. Recommended power 46,000, 22,000, 8,100. So you may have noticed on your account that the power levels of all of your characters kind of went up pretty high. So what they did here, and I want to be very clear, they did not change the stats of your characters. All they did was change the formula that they used to calculate the power level of your character. And the reason they did that is so that it's much easier for everybody to distinguish who's a 7-star, who's a 5-star, who's a 3-star, right? That was kind of a problem in Arena, and kind of made the recommended power a little bit harder to gauge as well. So they also updated the recommended power to kind of account for that. The recommended powers for Chapter 2 and Chapter 1 are very different. Not very different. The first two difficulties are different. The third one is the same. And for me, this confirms something that I've been saying for a little while now, but I feel like this does confirm it. Difficulty 3 and beyond is for characters that have 5 stars or more. Difficulty 2 is probably for characters that have 3 stars, and difficulty 1 is kind of just, you know, your mishmash, the bottom of the barrel stuff. So they changed the recommended powers here too on Chapter 1. Instead of, what is it, 8,100 on Chapter 2, it's 5,000, and then 16,000. I think it's 22,000 on Chapter 2. And that ties into something else I want to mention. The points you get on Chapter 1 are going to probably be a lot higher than the points you get on Chapter 2. There's less RNG in Chapter 2 as well. I think that plays a role. You can, if you get lucky, get very high points in Chapter 1 of the raid, right? So I'll show you that by going to my personal reward track here. So Chapter 1 here, I got 1.98. And then if I go to Chapter 2, I got 1.277. So it's basically a 700,000 point difference for me. And this also confirms something that people were wondering about. And they talked about this is how it was going to happen, but I'll just reiterate it here. Every chapter, the personal reward track basically resets. So what that means is that you can get all of these rewards again up to whatever amount that you end up getting to. And this is going to be a really good way to get Gandalf shards for you personally once you can kind of master parts of the raid. The guild rewards, on the other hand, do accumulate chapter to chapter. And this is something else I want to kind of share briefly, is that you don't have to wait for the in-game mail now, the 24-hour in-game mail. You can just go in there. I think it's probably like an hour or two after the raid closes. Whatever the time is that they give, I'm not exactly sure there, but I think it's basically an hour or two. Then you can go click on the box, and then there'll be a claim button down here, and that's how you can get your rewards there. So you don't have to wait for the in-game mail anymore if you don't want to. That's a little bit about some of the things they've been changing with this Chapter 2 update. Let's talk about what's the goal of Chapter 2. Obviously, there's a cave troll. The primary goal you should have for Chapter 2 basically comes down to you should be toppling the cave troll, and then once the cave troll is toppled, you need to make sure that you kill him all the way. And then you want to do this at least 2 times. Kill him all the way is not the right word. You want to take his health down to 0 once he's toppled. If you do that at least 2 times, I think you're probably in a very good place to get high points for that difficulty. I have yet to get max score. That's actually not true. I did it on difficulty 2 with my Rivendell elves pretty easily. But that's not the appropriate level for them. So you want to topple him, and then once he's toppled, make sure he loses all of his health. Let's talk specifically about some of the mechanics of the raid, though. I want to... Here we go. Click on this. Let me hide myself so you can actually read it. Okay. So I'm going to basically split this raid up into 2 phases. There's the first phase where he doesn't have Enrage, and then after the first topple, there's the second phase where he does have Enrage. So for this first phase, all he's doing is gaining stacks of momentum. And momentum is basically just giving him speed. So if he has momentum, he's able to take turns faster and then get more momentum as a result. There are a few ways he gets momentum: when he attacks somebody, when he blocks an attack, and then when he does counterattack. The second ability here, Deafening Roar, this is where he gives himself 3 stacks of counterattack, as well as Cleansing Banes from himself, and then double all stacks of momentum. I don't know if this is a bug or not, but you cannot ability block or disable this material. Every time I would try and stop this from happening, because he doubles all stacks of momentum, he would just ignore it and do that. One other thing I want to point out here that I don't know if it's a bug or they just didn't add additional tooltip stuff here. If he puts counterattack on himself and you say do Black Serpent Poison on him, what it will do is eat one of the counterattack stacks and he'll attack you. And then it will convert the Black Serpent Poison into a poison as if it absorbed a buff, right? Like how it's supposed to work, but he still gains a stack of momentum. So I'm not sure. That doesn't seem to be working as intended, because Black Serpent Poison is specifically in the game to prevent this. You know, it's being sold as one of these things that prevents getting the momentum buff boon. Okay. Basically, the way you can control momentum is either by doing crit attacks or by removing the boons. So for removing boons, you got characters like Ironhide on his special, and Arwen has a special that removes boons. Pippin's basic can remove boons. So those are all great things to help remove boons. But also, I think the biggest thing is that critical attacks remove boons, and each hit of a multi-hit attack will remove boons, which is why Lomin is actually really, really good for this particular chapter of the raid, because he has his special 1 gives him additional crit chance for his 5-hit attack based on how many boons he has. And so when he's with Rivendell Elves and he's got all those boons, he's basically critting 5 times. If he does crit 5 times, you've removed 5 stacks of momentum. Okay, so when he gets toppled, he loses all stacks of momentum. He sets his health to 25% of max health, and summons 2 random orcs. What this set health to 25% of max health means is that, let's say, you shouldn't save a big attack to get him below that 25% health margin, because it basically resets it back. So you can't just like kill him in one shot. So there's no way of cheating him once he's toppled, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is also where the RNG comes into it, because he's summoning 2 random Moria orcs. And so it can be any of the orcs from chapter 1 except the bomber. So some bad RNG orc rolls would be something like you get a Skull Crusher and a War Guard, or 2 War Guards, or 2 Skull Crushers, right? And then while he's toppled, he's gaining turn meters still. And so you have 2 options. You can either take away all of his health again, now that the rest of the remaining 25% health, or he's going to take a turn. You want to get rid of the remainder of his health, because that's what gives you the extra points. Either way, either he takes a turn or you get rid of all of his health, he's going to pop back up at 100%, and what I'm going to call phase 2 of this chapter starts. And that's when he gains Enraged. So Enraged is when he can basically gets extra armor, block chance. It's hard to see because the tooltip is blocked by the character model. Damage and resistance per stack. I think he gets damage reduction. So once he becomes Enraged, that's when it's going to start to become harder to, 1, bring him back down to be toppled again, and land debuffs. I think because his block chance goes up, it might be harder to crit him as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And then every time he gains a stack of momentum, he's gaining a stack of Enrage as well. And so the key thing here is that you want to make sure, especially on phase 2 of the raid, that you still have good enough control over the momentum that he's not getting to 25 stacks. You can remove stacks of momentum. You cannot remove stacks of Enrage. All right, so I think it's probably best if we bring me back here, and we go, and I show you some footage of my Rivendell team here. This is from my live stream. So this is going into difficulty 3 with my full Rivendell squad. I had done some testing where I subbed out Eladin for Legolas just because of the extra crits. Don't want to do that. Keep the whole Rivendell squad together. The provokes on Eladin allow you to retaliate with Elra here, and it's actually massive, massive damage. So those green boons that are appearing above him, those are the stacks of momentum. That's when he clears everything. You can't ability block that or anything like that. So now you're going to see, I just cleansed here, but every time I hit him, he's going to counterattack. He's also going to gain a stack of momentum, even though I just took them all away. This special one here is really important because he's able to, Lomine is able to clear so many stacks of momentum that way. The whole goal for this first phase is just to make sure that your team survives and that you can control the momentum adequately. You want to make sure that it stays below 25 for sure, but 10 would be best. If your team can't do that in phase 1, I don't think they're going to do well in this raid. So we either need to reform the team or go down a difficulty level. So I'm just making sure he's not going so fast either, and then building up stacks of provoke on Eladin. And notice I'm going to save Elrond's special 2 here. Yep. Okay. So the reason I want to do that is because once he becomes toppled like he is now, let me pause. So he becomes toppled like he is now, he gets rid of all the stacks of momentum, which means, and he's additionally slowed, which means when you slow him in this state, when he doesn't have momentum and he's additionally slowed, you're really slowing him down. So if you have a high cooldown skill that puts slow, then this is the place to do it. So Elrond's special 2, you want to do it when he's toppled, and then Wubate's, I don't know what special it is, but his AoE slow as well is something to do here. And then also you want to do it here because it's an AoE slow and you can grab the minions and slow them down as well. Mauher's slow, his special 2, I think you could probably just do it whenever he pops up. You want to make sure if you have a slow on your team, you're doing it here while he's toppled like this. This is also going to be one of the reasons that Biffer is really, really good on Chapter 2 is because he's got this slow here. So this is where the RNG comes into place. I've said that now. I got 2 Manglers here. I think that's pretty fine. If you get a good roll, what I mean by that is like, so now I'm going to do this special 2. If the ads on either side are like favorable to you, then I think you can basically keep them there, because if you topple him again, then he doesn't spawn 2 more orc ads. It's just the same 2 that he had there. So ads that I think you should consider killing are definitely the War Guard, definitely Skull Crushers, and then probably Shadow Seers as well. And the reason I'm saying Shadow Seers is because when they use their basic, they can clear Banes off of teammates. So if you perhaps put a slow on the Cave Troll and then the Shadow Seer uses his basic, then that removes the slow and you've kind of wasted it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think here I do end up just going for all of the ads. So the other piece of advice I have for you is that when he's toppled, one of the things you want to make sure you can do is, I'm just going to try and get all my skill cooldowns on lock there. You see what I did? This is important as well. Make sure all my skill cooldowns are like pretty good. I've got buffs on everybody. You know, if I've got a character that can give out might, I want to make sure that I'm giving out might pretty close to when he's going to come back up again, because it becomes a race against the clock as soon as he goes into this phase 2, what I'm calling a phase 2, and becomes enraged. So I'm saving my special 2 there because it has armor penetration, which is going to become more important once he gets enraged. This is me going through that logic, yes. I think I did that there just to give myself some extra stacks of provoke. Big shout out to Sage. I guess he made it into this video as well. All right, let's see if we can skip ahead here. Yeah, I spent a lot of time talking. Okay. So he's basically, this is where you get the big points. You get him, he goes back up to 100% health. Now that blue buff is one you can't remove because those are the stacks of enrage. So you notice even when you remove momentum, it doesn't remove enraged. So the whole goal for the second phase here is just to, as quickly as possible, get him back down into a toppled state. But you also need to make sure that you're controlling momentum via buff removal or critical attacks. So I'm going to do his Lomian Special 2 here, I think. And that's going to remove a bunch of stacks of momentum. If momentum hits 25, you're basically going to get hosed, and you'll see that. So he's gaining stacks of momentum and enraged because he's blocking my attacks, and that's why he's doing that. In this particular run, I feel like I'm actually doing a pretty good job of controlling the momentum, which is important because, yes, as soon as he gets over 25, he becomes an issue. So right there, I didn't actually see him get to 25, but he does double things sometimes. Okay, so I guess it was just a skill that he had up, and as a result, because it was less than 25, we only experienced the slow effect, I think, and maybe some turn meter removal, but I actually think it's just the slow, which is ideal. So boom, bunch of retaliates there too because of Eladin getting hit, and then we're basically back in action with Elrond's heal. So now if he does that big seismic thing again, which he only has when he's enraged, he's going to probably stun everybody. So that's why you want to make sure that you keep it below 25. I think here I decided to do a basic just to weaken him because he was starting to hit pretty hard. This whole goal is just to get to these last little two, get down to the last two little health nuggets here. All right, let's see if I can get him. Do I save this run? I'm pretty sure I do. Nimbles are super important because you can dodge those attacks. Yes, so this is why Elrond is actually, his unbreakables are really good, and his ability to revive is incredible, right? I'm a sliver away. So my Elrond team obviously needs a little bit more work, but now I'm able to topple him again. So, and then I am immediately ready to go for adding the slow. It didn't stick this time because he has 53 stacks of enrage, and so he's just a lot more resistant to debuffs at that point. But this is actually a particularly good run, and I think we'll end the footage there. Yeah. Okay, so let me just briefly talk about some teams that I think worked very well and what didn't work well. Rivendell Elves seem to work very well. I don't have Haradrim, so I can't tell you if they would work well or not. I think they will, but I haven't seen any personal testing on that. I also think there's a weird interaction right now with BSP and him getting stacks of momentum when he does counterattacks. That needs to be resolved. I also want to make sure that we can do something like disable his ability to do that roar. I think that'll actually be a really good strategy going into the future. I did Isengard with Bolg. I think the big thing there is that I wasn't entirely sure that Bolg was adding a lot. And I'm almost forgetting actually one of the best pieces of advice I can give you, which is characters that apply things like bleeds and poisons are really good in Chapter 2. And the reason is because those effects, he's got a massive amount of max health, and those effects take off just percentages of max health, and they're not nerfed like they are in a lot of other video games. You go play a boss, and they're like, well, bleeds can only do this amount of health or whatever. That's not the case here. So stacking bleeds, stacking poisons are huge, which is why I think a team like, and burns, which is a team like Mordor is going to be pretty good. Obviously, Haradrim are going to be pretty good if they can land all those poisons. He's just going to continue to just take chunks out of his health, and that's probably not affected by armor, basically, as well. So that'll be good for in that phase 2 part of the raid. So bleeds, poisons, burns, really, really good. That's why I think Mordor is going to be good. Isengard is pretty good, and I think Ajak is actually going to be very, very good too. He can apply a bleed on his special too. And also he has Expose, which reduces armor on his basic. Dunhar is even very, very good. You just use his basic, keep stacking those bleeds, and it works out pretty well. My dwarf team did pretty well actually, and I'm very happy about that. And when I get Biffer, I think it's basically going to be I'm going to try and work towards a full dwarf team. I think he can be stunned. I'm pretty sure the cave troll can be stunned. The only character right now there are 2 characters in the game that can stun right now. One is Gandalf, which nobody has, and the other is Fro, who is the dwarf tank. And so I think a full dwarf team might actually do a lot of good work here. Isengard, obviously very good. Rohan is pretty good, especially with Strider. I used Ironhide with Rohan, and that worked out pretty well. Whereas with Isengard, I did my same, Isengard 3 plus Ajak plus Bekaloo seemed to work pretty well for me. I'm still not convinced on Bolg, to be honest with you. But, one of the other characters that can stun is Nuraz's Troll. I actually think Nuraz might be very good here in this raid as well. I haven't been able to test him. I'm not sure about Road to Rivendell on this chapter. I think they're going to probably be pretty good at controlling the momentum buffs, and maybe that's enough, but I think they might be better at Chapter 1 than they are at Chapter 2. Again, I haven't been able to test that so far, but so far, I think it's Rivendell, Haradrim, Dwarves, maybe Mordor up at the top, and then teams like Isengard and Rohan's probably worse in this chapter. But I'm excited for you all to play it. I actually had a lot of fun. This is a less RNG dependent chapter, so I think people are going to be disappointed that they can't get as high as points, but it requires more strategy and more thinking about things rather than just hoping that you get the bomb to drop. And so with that, take it easy.